We'll call the Washington County Services Order. I'd like to have Mr. Deacons do a prayer and pledge for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we're gathered here tonight to conduct a business matters for Washington County in the name of the people. Please guide our hearts and our minds to fairness, right speech, and right thought. Please impart some of your infinite wisdom onto this body as we make our decisions. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope y'all can overlook my horse condition tonight. I don't know whether it's weather or what it is, but I'm stuck with it. Okay, I'd like to have somebody approve the agenda, ask if there's any objections to approving the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, I believe we're ready for radio communications upgrade. You have a recommendation for us?
I have a recommendation that we take it to the Finance and Budget Committee.
Do we have a second on that?
Well, I'll second it, but I'm not sure. I just talked with counsel before the meeting, and you think it needs to go to Finance and Budget? We need to make what the recommendation is that we're sending. We just don't need to send it.
Right. It just depends on what you're wanting. If you're wanting to, if the idea that or the body wants to put forward is to move forward with some sort of bond issue, well, then you need to make the recommendation that we employ bond counsel so that we can go. So bond counsel is going to have to be the one that prepares all of the documents and the ordinances for the bond, if that's what you're wanting to do. So that's kind of what we need to get going as quickly as possible.
Okay, what we need to do is make a motion that the radios are going to cost about somewhere between $6 and $8 million, and that we send this for 1/4 cent to the people in March to vote on. This will be the most efficient way to do this, and it would sunset as soon as the radios are paid for. Other options, if we didn't do this, we would have to take out a bank loan, and it would probably cost another $2 million over a period of time to pay this loan off, because we don't have that much extra money in unappropriated reserves.
Okay.
So, I was at the Fireman's County meeting this last week sometime, or a week before, I can't remember. Thursday night. And this was discussed, and they were very supportive of going on and asking the people to support a 1/4 cent sales tax to pay for these radios and to sunset immediately when they're paid for.
Exactly, okay.
So you
So-
do that in a bond?
I think that's my understanding from the very outset, that there'd be a bond issue involved, and it would have to go through the election, and then the 1/4 cent sales tax would be set up to pass it, with people having to vote to have it happen.
And I did talk with, do I still have the floor?
Yes, go ahead.
I did talk with Jennifer Price, and she says the ballot title is very important.
Okay.
That it needs to be short and to the point so that people can understand it.
Okay.
So that's where we are. And I'll make a motion that we go on and you need to probably put it in better sentence structure than this. For the 1/4 cent sales tax be presented to the public at the March election to pay for the radio systems. And we've got to remember that this is the radio systems for the entire Washington County.
Yep.
That Fayetteville, that we're supporting and connecting and helping them also with their radio systems by providing towers and things that they can also use. So, and Springdale.
Okay. You have any comments about what we need to do in this regard?
I would just, no, I think you're fine with your motion. I think it also needs to include the approval to employ bond counsel to prepare the documents, because that's what you'll need to vote on. That's the actual ordinances that have to be passed or will be prepared by bond counsel.
Do we need to pass this on to the budget committee, or do we need to pass it on to full quorum court?
I mean, you're not looking to appropriate, I know there's money involved, but you're not actually asking the court to appropriate money. I don't really think it really is either way. I think you get there,
I
but
think we just need to send it on to the quorum
Full
court
Okay.
for approval.
I like the idea. Do
Thank
I have
you.
a second on that?
I got a second.
Second, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to be clear, when we talk about buying radios for the county, and J.P. Harbison mentioned that it benefiting the city of Fayetteville, for whom are we buying radios?
I'll have to let,
Okay,
you're the radio man.
We will be buying infrastructure for all of the dispatch centers in Washington County. That will be towers, and Fayetteville will be getting additional channels added to their towers. And Springdale is liking it because they're gonna be, all of us is gonna be able to communicate together out in the fields when we're doing searches and stuff. But the radios, the handheld radios and the radios for the vehicles, we're gonna be buying about 1,740 of them for every volunteer fire department, Central EMS, John Luther's office, the sheriff's office. Everyone will have a radio when we get done. And that's a cost of about $3 million for
Okay.
the radios for everybody.
Okay. The rural fire departments, you mentioned Central EMS, the sheriff.
The rural fire departments,
small police
Well,
departments.
the Central EMS and the sheriff are all part of Washington County. The fire departments are independent nonprofits, or what is their legal
they're all volunteer
designation?
fire departments for Washington County. But they got their own numbers, their tax ID numbers and everything, yes.
Okay, will their radios belong to us, or their radios will belong to them?
What we're looking to do is to allocate, if the Washington County buys your radios and own them, you've got to pay taxes on them. And so therefore, you're paying about $250,000 worth of tax. If you allocate each fire department a certain amount of money for each radio, the volunteer fire departments can buy them and they don't pay taxes on them. So the committee come up with the idea to just allocate each fire department $1,740 per radio per however many they needed. And that's where we come up with the numbers.
Okay, let me make sure our county attorney and that I understand what this is. We're going to give the rural fire departments county money to buy radios that they will own.
that's what it sounds like the proposal is, to allow them to buy their own county radios, and we would not own them if we did that. The other option would be for the county to purchase the radios, and then we would own them, we would loan them. But I think that the committee has recommended giving the money, given a per diem or a per radio amount to the rural fire departments to purchase their own radios.
And that's perfectly fine for the county to give money to a private nonprofit.
The county does and has done that in the past. Now, you stopped doing it because everybody was wanting money all the time, but that's just one of the ways that you could go about doing it, yes.
And all these radios will be the same. We won't have any problems with anybody talking to anybody. We won't.
I get you.
Right, the system will all be the same. Now, the actual hardware that is purchased would be up to those entities, those groups, those fire departments, like brand names and the size or capacity of that particular. It's like a cell phone. You know, there's a lot of different cell phones you can purchase. They all work on the same AT&T network or Sprint or Verizon, but you have the ability to purchase different actual phones, which would be the same thing for the fire departments. With
So
radios.
one fire department might buy X brand of radios, and the Goshen Fire Department might buy another brand, and Washington County will have a different brand. When a call is made from these various brands of radios, will the information seen by the dispatcher all be the same?
Yeah, it's a P25 radio system. And so they'll all have to be P25 radios, which is mandated by the feds. It's the federal network that the feds have set up. And so all the radios they purchase will have to be those same types of P25, but it's no different than owning a Chevy or a Dodge or a Ford. It's still, it'll still get you there.
I don't speak radio very well,
No, I
that's why I'm trying to understand it. So if a call comes in from the Elkins Fire Chief's radio, dispatch will know it's the Elkins Fire Chief and he's on Round Mountain.
That's my understanding. Each one of these radios has the capability of actually having an ID tagged to some person, should that be the route that we go. But yes, my suggestion would be that the county reimburse or give money to the fire departments based on actually what they purchase. Does that make sense? I think
So
you
now
run
you're
in-
saying the fire departments will buy it and we'll reimburse them.
Correct. Well, so what you've got to worry about in this is, and where you're going to get some confusion is, if you're just going to give a set amount, then if there's leftover money, then what happens with that? Because the voters have voted for radios. I don't think you can then take that money and purchase other equipment with it. I mean, I think it's earmarked. And so that's kind of, and I've not discussed it, it's not been discussed, but that's one thing I think that we need to make sure that we kind of figure out in this process.
Will all this be spelled out in the ordinance you are going to draft for the
Now, the
Board?
ordinance will only be for the actual bond, for the actual, it will specify that it's for the communication system. I guess it could. I don't see any reason why we couldn't spell it out in the bond, or in the ordinance, but the main part of the ordinance is just the actual bond itself to get it on the ballot.
I'm a little bit concerned about asking people to buy something that I'm not really sure what it is, but that's all I have. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mr. Deming might be able to share some insight.
Well,
on it.
the P25 system is the state of Arkansas won't just let you buy a $10 radio and put it on it. It has to be P25 compatible. And the sheriff's office, they're the big users of this, and they may not want a $1,700 radio, and we're allocating so much money per department, and they can get that much money, and if they want to buy a $4,000 radio, they got to pay the difference. And all the committees and everybody we've talked to, and everybody's agreed, that's great. Because most fire departments can get by with a $1,700 Kenwood radio that's got Bluetooth, that's got everything in the world you need. But Motorola offers some radios that's got some stuff that really works out in Devil's Den when you're down in the holler trying to rescue people that a Kenwood won't do. But we're allocating them so much money, if they want to buy a bigger, better thing, they're going to pay the difference. The fire department will be the one liable for that cost.
Okay.
That's what we've come up with for the committee.
Ms. Harbison, do you have?
But all of this stuff will be spelled out black and white 100% before anything's spent. And if you need to see that, I can get you all that for you.
Okay, Ms. Harbison?
Well, Willie answered that question, but I think our attorney brought up another issue. I really don't think, if they get a radio that costs less than the $1,700, then that money would have to come back into that pool of money that the money came out of. So, but if someone wants a more expensive radio, they can buy, this would just be part of the money to support that. So, I think it's a good deal for our rural fire departments because they are the backbone of our communities out in the rural areas. And we can't spend $3,000 or $4,000 on radios for everybody. So I think this is a compromise that's been worked out. Thank you.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yes. I just wanted to state that I visited jurisdictions in Farmington and Prairie Grove and spoke with the chief of police in both jurisdictions and the mayors, and they were both very supportive of taking this to midterm election cycle, and that what's great is that Prairie Grove's current radio systems are already compatible. So those jurisdictions, as well as Farmington's that I know of, they won't need new radios. They've already got the radios that they need, so that's not going to be a cost to the court. So I just wanted to put that
Okay,
out there.
good.
Thank you.
Good information. Ms. Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious how we ensure that there's competitive bidding if everybody's buying on their own. It seems like we would want to have one, I mean, because the buying power would be greater if every radio were part of the same bid, and I would think that all of us, and the taxpayers especially, would get a better deal if we bid every radio and then everybody purchased under the same contract. Because if we're going to be divvying up money for everybody to go out and, you know, this person goes to Verizon and this person goes to AT&T, to use your example, Mr. Lester, it seems like maybe we're not getting the most efficient cost. I'm also concerned, I mean, I think Mr. Lester's right, that there has to be a process where somebody submits for reimbursement or some kind of approval so that we're not giving cash
Okay.
where we can't trace it. But I'm also concerned because there's a lot of history in Arkansas about governments funding nonprofits and there being a problem legally with that. The GIF money goes back to a time when it was given to nonprofits, and that was banned because of problems with, I would think that we would do better to give stuff and not cash, or even to reimburse. Because I think we get a little dicey in terms of our ability to fund nonprofits. I think we ought to look at that legal issue pretty carefully, because I wouldn't want us to set up a big system just to sort of set it up one way when the other way sounds just as good, if it's going to cause us legal headaches.
I think the radio group, I think that committee kind of looked at the cost. And did y'all go through the bidding process, or what happened with that on the radio committee?
There's thousands of different radio brands and names out there, but you got to consider service. There's a lot of them that you buy out, you got to send back. Your radios are out of pocket for months. We've got dealers right here in town that, they've been good to the volunteer fire departments for 40 years that I know of. And all the fire departments, they're really, well, not all, I'm just going to talk for my whole side of the west side of the county, Perry Grove, Farmington, and Nob Hill, and a lot of them, they're very, very pleased with Kenwood. They're very pleased with Smith Two-Way. And the Motorola deal it's a big bear, and it's got a lot of political war behind it, that it costs a lot of money. And I just hate to see the county get pressured to do a lot what they want to do, and the committee has worked hard for a year and went a lot of places and seen a lot of things and argued a lot of points to get where we are today. And I'm sure Brian will have to help us a lot more to get everything lined out. And the volunteer fire departments don't care if the county owns them. We're just trying to save $200,000 throw away in taxes.
Yeah. Ms. Madison?
But we don't care about all that, so it don't matter if y'all own them or we own them.
Okay, thank you.
So candidly, J.B. Lemming's comments actually make me a little more worried that if we allow all these other folks to spend the money, they're going to go give it to their buddy rather than the highest bidder or the lowest bidder. And Motorola may be pressured, but if Motorola's got the best deal, then that's the best way that we sell it to the taxpayers. I don't want there to be, oh, well, my buddy works at Verizon, so he's been really good to me for my personal cell service, so I've been going to him.
Yep.
And that's what it sounds like the committee's been dealing with, is this pressure of everybody's got their local friend, and that doesn't sound efficient.
Well, I think-
It seems like the county ought to bid it out, get one supplier with the best price for everything, and that's what the departments get. Or they then have to, if they want to go to one of these other entities, they're going to have to go fund it themselves.
Yep.
Because if we're talking to ask the taxpayers to spend millions of dollars on this, I don't think we can say, but we're going to carve out a little place so that everybody can help their buddy. Never mind the cost.
Okay,
So
Okay, thank
I
you.
can't support that.
all right. You know, I guess for years I was involved with using radios, and I'm telling you, they can be temperamental. They can require a lot of service, and I'm sure these people are choosing dealers that they like, that they've had a good service with, and that is very important. Mr. Pond, did you have something?
I'd like for the court to consider to recognize that each one of these separate entities, each one of these fire departments, they have to operate under their own board. Each one has its own board of directors, and any that I've had any experience with are they're very frugal with the money that they have. Anything that a fire department or a law enforcement office or anything like that, everything they go to buy, it seems like costs more because of the product having to be what it should be. And if we don't allow these people to have their own local representation, we're taking away from what kind of care we get from our first responders, the pride and the dedication that they have for taking care of the folks in their communities. I got a little bit of a problem with the idea of our hour here on the court deciding as their big brother and telling them what we think the best deal is for them, and then winding up taking all of that money and putting it into the hands of one provider.
Yep.
That's going to be going the opposite of finding the best deal or the lowest bidder or the lowest bidder that can still provide the service that each one of these different communities needs. Mm-hmm. There's a vast difference in the terrain, the topography, everything about it. As Mr. Lemming suggested, one type of radio or a brand might work an awful lot better than another type for another community. Mm-hmm. I appreciate what you've done on this, and I am for the local representation and each one of them getting involved in the competition. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what Mr. Lemming meant by local service and providers, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in speaking with some of law enforcement in the area, they were telling me when I came to talk to them about this issue that they had used a specific provider for years and had a personal relationship with that provider, Smith Two-Way here in Fayetteville. And I think that's is that what you meant by?
Smith Two-Way's been here forever, and they've got our infrastructure and our radio system right now. Here just about a month ago, we got struck by lightning out on the east side of Fayetteville. Within about 5 hours, 6 hours, is back up running. And if you have a company that owns this business and they're in California, and you have a system down, and you've got one guy that lives way off down Fort Smith, their service guy, I don't think he's going to get here and get it took care of very quick. Service has been one of the best things we've had around here. And it's just, we do pick, but that's the only one we have. I'm sorry, I mean, it's not, if we had more providers here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, it'd be great, but we don't.
Well,
So you got to go with what we got.
And that was the point that
Yes.
the law enforcement I spoke with said that they enjoyed the services they got, and they didn't want to lose that. They wanted to make sure that they could continue their relationship with Smith Two-Way. And I also wanted to just say that it needs to be completely clear to the public that this will sunset. I think I heard top 2 years, but if it gets paid off before then it's done. So it is a sales tax that will sunset, and I fully support it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hires?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a point of clarification that I'd like to ask. At the beginning, you stated this is going to cost between $6 to $8 million. Wondering, is it closer to 6? Is it closer to 8? $2 million feels like a very large range, and so just wondering if we could get some clarification on that, please.
I think to clarify your numbers, it's going to be 8.5 million.
Okay. Well, we got to remember, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's been some great discussion on this. To Ms. Madison's point, I agree with her on a cohesive team, a cohesive contract. Then, balancing the scales, I also hear what Justice Lemming is saying on the availability of services. But my question to get to the solution of all of this is, what would be the solution to get a cohesive team built that satisfies both of these issues? You see what I'm saying? And
Yep.
is there a way that we can work towards that, or has the committee already addressed that? Therefore, this is the only way. So I'm trying to bring, to Justice Madison's point, that's a good point. I don't want to be good big brother either. But I do believe we need to have a cohesive team in all of this. And if we can work our way towards that, I think it'd be fantastic for everybody. And good job, Justice Lemmings, on all the work that you've done. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
The one thing I hope y'all remember, this is not the final step. This is going to the quorum court, and there'll be details to be worked out. And I'm sure the radio committee's been great to do this study. For a full year, they've been studying this thing, and it's been a tough climb. Yes, sir.
Well, if we don't get it in front of the people, we don't know if we're going to buy anything.
That's true.
Ain't nothing going to be bought until we get approved for some money.
Yep.
We got to get on the ballot and see if the people will give us an eighth of a cent.
Mm-hmm.
An eighth will raise, well, a quarter will raise 10 million. So we're saying it'll take about 18 to 20 months. If we do this thing right, it'll be paid for before it ever goes online. It'll be done, and the money will go away. And all the specifics that you're asking for, John Luther's got them all. He's got everything you want. And, I didn't know that we needed it here tonight to spell it all out. We're not buying nothing. We just need to know if the voters will vote for it
Yep.
or against it.
Good.
If they vote against it, we'll have to back up and repunt.
Okay.
They vote for it, hey, let's go.
Okay. We got a proposal and a second here to pass this on the full quorum court. Do we need a roll call, Patty, or just call voice?
Just a voice vote.
Voice vote, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Okay, let's move on to the next step. We have Mr. Shackelford and Tim Hudson from the hospital to come and share with us about the cancer.
Here are some results.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
push it back
There we are. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and of the court, thank you for having us here. My name is Tim Hudson. I'm Executive Director of the Washington Regional Medical Foundation, the fundraising arm that supports the mission of Washington Regional Medical Center. Thank you for having me and our CEO, Larry Shackelford, here to present information to you regarding plans for a new cancer support home. Some of you might be familiar with the current cancer support home, which is on Woolsey, behind the former hospital in the location now occupied by UAMS Northwest. For more than 20 years, Washington Regional Medical Foundation has been operating this cancer support home to meet non-medical needs of cancer patients and families. Many of these individuals who are treated there or seen there are not necessarily Washington Regional patients. Some are treated at Highlands Oncology, the Breast Center, and other providers in our community. Services include lodging, overnight lodging for folks who have to travel into the area for cancer treatment. We also provide a boutique with wigs and scarves and hats and prosthetic devices for cancer patients, counseling, education and support groups, diagnostic screenings, among many other services. All these are provided at no cost to the individuals who come for treatment. We are fortunate to have gifts and grants from individuals, from Komen, Ozark, the Cancer Challenge, Arkansas Cancer Coalition, Walmart Foundation, and many grateful patients who send funds to make sure these services are available to others. The best way to explain what we do and is to show you, let you hear a little bit from some people we've provided services for. A very brief 4-minute video. If my technology does what I'm hoping it will,
Super.
I'll show that to you. Here we are. my audio is not playing on your screen here, is it? Okay. Hold on. We'll start back over here in a second. Sorry about that. Mine shows 100%, which would make my ears rattle if it was at 100%. Here.
You look like me at home. Two women just trying to figure it out.
I've watched this probably 20 or 30 times. I might be able to narrate it from memory, but you need to hear from the folks who are taking care of it. No, no music yet. Now let's see.
Speaker button there on the dashboard, click on it.
Let's see. Nothing yet. Yeah, mine's on, it's not on mute, it's at 66% volume. Yeah, this was, I appreciate your indulgence. If you'll bear with us just a second here, I'm gonna. We're always great at technology. Well.
No offense to Patty. Teachers in the room are struggling.
We're struggling.
So hard right now.
We really want to go play with cords.
Everything's plugged where it needs to be.
There's got to be an audio input. I know. My third graders.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a rundown here. This is the current facility on Woolsey. Many of you recognize this older building. It's over 90 years old. We've been operating it for over 20 years. It provides, as I said, a range of services, including overnight lodging. We have a lot of limitations for patients who are coming to see us. You can see we've had to build on a ramp for access. The front door is accessed through steps. Mr. Tuller here, he and his wife have been with us for a number of years. He's had cancer on 2 or 3 different occasions, and he keeps coming back to see us when he needs treatment and services. Ms. Krotz here also receives services through our navigation program. That's where we have nurses who work with folks to navigate the cancer journey. Ms. Bachman's husband was a longtime patient in Northwest Arkansas for cancer services, cancer treatment. Sadly, his journey ended last year when he passed. You can see it's a lovely home-like setting, but you can also see stairs to get up to 3 of the bedrooms, 1 bedroom downstairs. We also have shared bathroom facilities for a couple of the bedrooms upstairs, not necessarily ideal for cancer patients. When we started these services, of course, we were happy to have the space, but we're seeing an increase in our community and cancer treatment availability, and so more and more folks are coming to us for care. Over 1,500 people have visited the Cancer Support Home in an average year over the last few years. We need more space for lodging, for overnight guests, also for counseling and support groups. The boutique where the wigs and prosthetic devices are kept is accessed only through the 1 bathroom we have in the current facility. So if someone needs to use the facilities, we have to shut down the boutique. So having a new home is our goal, so we can provide better care for folks like the folks you're seeing on the video here. Just a second, it's going to show you where this will be. The new facility will be over on Longview. Washington Regional Medical Center owns property and is going to provide that to the foundation at no cost so we can develop a new home. That is, Longview is real close to the Willard Walker Hospice Home, not far from current Highlands Oncology, and less than a half-mile from Washington Regional Medical Center campus. Let's see here. Here we go. I'm going to get you to see where you can see where the location is going to be. drone footage is amazing. So there's the Washington Regional Campus, and we zoom out in the direction of Longview, not far from Northwest Arkansas Pathology and Associates. So again, in the kind of the medical hub of our city. So the plans are for up to 10 bedrooms, to have a more accessible facility, so that folks don't have to wait for that one room that's on the available downstairs. We also want to provide outdoor space for folks so they can have time for respite and recovery while they're here. Some folks they'll come for 4 to 6 weeks of radiation and chemo, go home for a month, and then have to come back. And sometimes, as I explained with some of our folks here, that has been going on for a couple of years or more for some of our clients. Well, you didn't get to hear the good people talk until now, and I'm going to ask Mr. Shackelford to come up and explain a little bit more about what we have going on. I will say that it's as a nonprofit, we're raising funds for this. It's a $4.1 million campaign. We have secured over $2.9 million so far. And in fact, no joke, just on my way here, I had an email from someone saying they wanted to make a $25,000 contribution to it, and I answered, I pulled over safely and answered, yes, please, thank you. But I'll ask Mr. Shackelford to share a little bit more with you about the plans and what we would like to ask of the county.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Butch. Sorry for the technology issues.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to come. And our purpose was twofold tonight. First is we wanted to share with you the vision for the Northwest Arkansas Cancer Support Home. Just to highlight a couple things that Tim shared. All of the services provided by the Cancer Support Home are free of charge. There are no user fees. They are open to anyone in Washington County. This is a project that has been underway for quite some time, and we're pleased to be at this point of the end in sight. The other request that I would like to bring this evening is that we would request that the property that is currently being operated as a cancer support home on Woolsey, the home that you saw, be deeded to Washington Regional, and that we would be able to sell that current home and apply 100% of proceeds to the new cancer support home that is being built. Obviously, we think this is the highest and best use of that building. We can find other admin, other uses for it, but the idea of being able to continue the mission of what that building has been used for, the ability to then get that building likely back on the tax rolls moving forward, is the direction that we would like to go.
Okay, all right. I wasn't aware that the county owned that building.
So the building was purchased, I believe, in 1983. It was purchased with private funds, but that was a part of the overall lease. It is part of the lease that I believe expires in 2063 of all of the Washington Regional property.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we'll have to pass this on the full quorum court for consideration, but I really appreciate you coming. I had no idea we had free services out there like that. That's fantastic. Any comments, questions, suggestions? I'm sorry?
Just point of clarification, isn't this the judge's area of responsibility, or is it the court's responsibility as far as deeds and contracts?
There's a state law that would allow us to give that property, donate that property to Washington Regional.
Okay.
That process requires approval from the county judge, but also then requires approval from the quorum court. And so it's not just one decision to be made. Both of you have to make that decision.
Okay. Thank you. That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I've got another question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask my question, and then I'd like to point out there's a gentleman that's had his hand up back there, but do we know what the current value of the property is?
Do we want to what?
I
What the value is?
I don't think so.
And their lease runs until 2063? Is that what I understood?
Yes.
And what are the terms of that lease?
I don't know. I thought that lease was up in 2027. I mean, looking at some documents, but I'm not sure. I have no idea. I just thought it came up for renewal a lot sooner than that. I thought the longest lease that we currently have is the lease to UAMS for the old Washington Regional Hospital that doesn't expire until 2047. I thought that was the longest termed lease that we have, but I'm not real sure.
Are we receiving any rent? Or this is just a gift?
No, $1 a year,
$1 a year? Okay.
like everything else.
Well, before we rush in to give this away, I'd like to point out the county's a little strapped for money. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion here to pass this on the full quorum court for further consideration?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, we got a second. Any discussion about it? You ready for the vote?
Well,
Ms. Ann, go ahead.
I just want to say, let's pass it on where everybody is making a decision, not just the committee.
Yes.
So let's move this on to the full quorum court for consideration. Thank
All
you.
right. Mr. Pond?
I'd like to say I'd be interested in hearing what the county judge has to say about it between now and then also. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, ready for the vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys coming and sharing. Sound like a fabulous service. Okay, next we have Dr. Nicole Hardeman, Executive Director of the Illinois Watershed. Welcome, Doctor.
Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me here. Little technology adjustment.
Yeah, see what he.
It's not.
I'm sorry?
Ask that guy
There's no
that's had his
audio.
hand up all this time.
He's an IT guy who wants to help.
But he's not our IT
Yeah,
guy,
I'm
so
just-
we don't.
Well, maybe just at least tell him that.
Are we ready to go? Okay. I have no audio. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Hardeman. I am Executive Director at Illinois River Watershed Partnership. I would like to thank JP's Madison and Harbison and Bowman for letting me badger you to present to the group tonight and just sort of reintroduce myself and Illinois River Watershed Partnership. Many of you may have known my predecessor, Delia Hawk, and we would just like to kind of review what are services that we provide to Washington County. We do have a contract for services for education around water quality related issues as part of your stormwater permit and help fulfill those services at $5,000 a year. Does everyone know where the Illinois River Watershed is? All right, yes. Yes, so as I often say, if you see a creek, river, or stream in the urban area of northwest Arkansas, it's most likely part of the Illinois River Watershed. We're not technically in the watershed right now, but we do, as you know, rapidly growing area, but we also have the top 2 producing counties for poultry and livestock production. And so we're dealing with 2 very different sets of issues in the Illinois River watershed right now: rapid urbanization as well as high agricultural production. So we get to run the gambit in terms of water quality solutions. Our board is composed of 6 stakeholder groups with the intent that we have a diversity of interests represented to come to consensus-based solutions for water quality. We are working on a voluntary and non-regulatory basis. So you can see our stakeholder groups there. We have Arkansas Farm Bureau on the board, as well as the Nature Conservancy, University of Arkansas, many different interests all working towards improving water quality in the Illinois River. As I mentioned, Washington County has been, for the last 3 years, has been a sponsor. We call it a sponsor even though we held a contract for services at the stream level. We are about 1/3 funded through private foundations, 1/3 through our city, county, and corporate sponsorships, and another 1/3 through state and federal grants. We, as always, are always so thankful to our sponsors and our partners for paying us to work on water quality and conservation issues in Northwest Arkansas. So I'm born in Fayetteville, graduated high school in Rogers. I live in Bentonville right now, so I have been around Northwest Arkansas for a while, and I love being able to work on natural resources issues in Northwest Arkansas. So our mission, and I always think it's important to reiterate our mission because this is what we work on a day-to-day basis. This is what our staff focuses on every single day. I will say we are a staff of 4 full-time and 2 part-time, so a small nonprofit working on a huge issue in Northwest Arkansas. But we work to improve the integrity of the Illinois River through public education and outreach, water quality monitoring, and implementation of conservation and restoration practices. I will also say, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. So a little bit about the condition of the watershed right now in terms of water quality. What you see right here are phosphorus concentrations at the state lines. So phosphorus, if you don't know, has had a little bit of contention between the states of Arkansas and Oklahoma since about the 80s around phosphorus concentrations in the watershed. So what you can see here at the top, in the blue dots, are our actual measures of phosphorus concentrations. You can see here in the red dots are the 3-month rolling average. And then the line that you see here is the point of all that contention. So it is the phosphorus concentration standard that the state of Oklahoma has of 0.037 milligrams per liter. And I'm going to make this presentation interactive. What do we see? What trend do we see around phosphorus concentrations in the watershed?
Going down.
It's going down, yes. We are making progress. This is through wastewater treatment plant upgrades, nutrient management plans, a myriad of improvements that have been made, but what are we also not seeing relative to the standard? We're not below it yet. So we still have some work to do in that regard. But in addition to phosphorus concentrations, we also have quite a few impairments. We operate on the 2016 list. ADEQ produces a list every 2 years. You can see here the subwatersheds for our Illinois River watershed. We have some pathogen impairments, sulfate impairments, nitrate impairments, and a chloride impairment. And so my directive, based on that mission statement, is to work on all those impairments, not just phosphorus concentrations. So with that in mind, our board defined in 2017 5 priority subwatersheds. So we have Sager Creek around Siloam, and then a majority of these other subwatersheds are in Washington County. So most of the work that you'll see me present here tonight is occurring in the county. We have Clear Creek around Lake Fayetteville, the main stem of the Illinois around Lake Weddington, Muddy Fork, which is just north of Prairie Grove, and Moores Creek around Lincoln, Arkansas. So we're most prominently known probably for our youth education program. We have a 30-acre facility out in Cave Springs, Arkansas. If you're like everyone else in Northwest Arkansas, you drive by and you say, I didn't even know anyone was there. So, but we do work there every single day. You can see here our renovated church used to be Lakeview Baptist Church in Cave Springs, and we do own what we call Partners Lake, formerly Lake Keith, there. And really, so we'll host about 2,000 school kids out at that facility on an annual basis. We offer these field trips free of charge. And, you know, it's about water quality, it's about talking about the natural world of Northwest Arkansas, but really we are on the front lines of nature deficit disorder out there. We get some kids that have never been on a hike. They think all green things are poison ivy and all moving things are venomous snakes, and we are there to help them through their trauma of being out in nature. So we are very happy to be able to offer these students or services to our local youth. On the monitoring side, so we have what we call our Ecological Assessment Project. And so the intention of this project is to really take an in-depth look at those priority subwatersheds that I mentioned earlier. As you can see here, ADEQ, for example, has a sampling site here for water quality purposes, but we, IRWP, we have no idea what's going on any of these tributaries around Muddy Fork or Moores Creek. And so the intention, this is essentially, I think of it as like a marketing effort. So when you are trying to identify a target audience to market to, you want to be as specific as possible, right? So when we are trying to identify where we want to work to improve water quality, we need data to make those decisions. And this is the mechanism that we use to make that data, to target our efforts and to more effectively spend the money of our sponsors and partners. So we have partnered with local East Initiative schools to collect this data. So Lincoln High School kids are working on Moores Creek. Prairie Grove kids are working in the Muddy Fork to look at land use and aquatic habitat and macroinvertebrate community. We had 289 students participate last year. So just a little bit about the data that we are collecting. This is what we call macroinvertebrate diversity scores, which just means the different types of water bugs that we can find in the water. If you have a large diversity of bugs, that indicates good water quality. Poor diversity indicates poor water quality. And as, again, the marketing component of this is we know which sites are have below average macroinvertebrate diversity scores for the watershed. You can see here this Clear Creek 4 site had little to no diversity, followed by Muddy Fork site, followed by another Clear Creek site. And so the idea is if we want to do and implement best management practices, these are the places that we would do it. So a little bit about that Clear Creek site and how we would move towards implementation. So you can see here, and this is exactly what we're looking for. We have a site here that is red in April, August, and November. So exhibiting poor water quality, or indicating poor water quality. So then our step, okay, who are the landowners that live or what's going on that tributary? And it turns out that lo and behold, the main landowner on that tributary is Botanical Garden of the Ozarks in the city of Fayetteville. So what do? We approach BGO and the city of Fayetteville and say, we would really like to implement some best management practices on this tributary. Would you partner with us to do it? And we do. We recently signed a contract with them to do some reforestation efforts around that tributary. So again, this ecological assessment is just helping us make decisions. Streambank Erosion Inventory Report. So Streambank erosion, has anyone witnessed it in the Illinois River watershed or the White River watershed? Yes, it is a huge challenge for us, especially in light of our rapid rate of urbanization and these extreme weather events that we've had recently. We are losing productive lands. If you think about land going at $10,000 an acre and you have 40 foot of it lost down the stream, that's a significant economic impact to our landowners. It's a safety hazard to people and animals and infrastructure that surround areas that are highly eroded, and it also results in sediment and nutrient loading to our waterways. And so what we did in 2017 was commissioned what we call a Streambank inventory assessment. We wanted to quantify how much sediment and nutrients were being contributed due to erosion. I have a design basis for any streambank restoration projects, and we want to work to protect areas that are in good condition. So what you see here is a map of our results. Again, working in those priority subwatersheds, we have Bunny Fork here, Moores Creek here, the main stem of the Illinois, a little bit of Clear Creek here, and we did some an assessment on Sager Creek as well. On the green areas, those are areas that have little to no streambank erosion. You can see red, orange, and yellow and purple areas here indicating those areas are losing up to 40 feet per year laterally from the streambank. So what the impact of this is that if we want to kind of look at some large-scale streambank restoration projects, we know where to work, but we also know where to work for land conservation efforts in these green areas. So we're working to protect those stream banks before they start getting eroded. And just to put it in perspective, so we assessed, sadly, 5% of the watershed, and we are estimating 85,000 pounds per year of phosphorus loading. To put that in, again, to put it in perspective, our phosphorus loading of our 4 big wastewater treatment facilities is 48,000 pounds per year. So streambank erosion is contributing literally a ton more phosphorus and potentially nitrogen than our wastewater treatment facilities. So it's a huge area for us to work and very expensive to repair. So a little bit about what we do on a restoration effort. We offer what we call our Landowner Services Program. And essentially, this is offering educational materials, field tours, one-on-one technical assistance. We do customized conservation plans for our landowners. Any landowner that asks for a conservation plan, we will design one. Folks that are in those priority subwatersheds are receiving subject-specific newsletters and mailers. Hopefully, maybe some of you have received them at some point. As I mentioned, we're focusing on urban low-impact development as well as looking at sustainable agricultural systems like rotational grazing, riparian reforestation, things like that. We're basically trying to serve our landowners in as many ways as they will interact with us. So you can see here, we have just some of our statistics from 2018, several hundred stakeholders educated, technical assistance to 20 stakeholders. So when I say that, I actually mean, so right before I came here, I was in the city of Springdale, and they are doing a big project around Luther George Park and a downtown revitalization, and trying to advise and consult them on ways to properly manage their stormwater as well as some restoration along Spring Creek there at Luther George Park. So that's the type of technical assistance that we provide both to private and public landowners. Urban and riparian restoration. So this is a really exciting project for us. So we received $1.4 million from the state of Arkansas and matched that dollar for dollar with a grant from the Walton Family Foundation for riparian restoration projects. And our goal is to repair 20 miles of riparian area and establish 2 square miles of rotational grazing systems. We have about 15 different eligible project types that we are funding right now, again, in those priority subwatershed areas. These are just some examples of projects that we're doing. So this is Johnson Mill Boulevard right here. We have Highway 49 to the west there. And I don't know, so the city of Johnson calls this big dome that you may have seen their missile silo. Has anyone seen that? Yeah. Well, it's a pumping system for Springdale Water Utilities. And in this entire parcel is 80 acres that is owned by the water utility but managed by the city of Johnson. We have proposed with them to reestablish forested area that will work to improve water quality, reestablish some native warm season prairie in this area, and then a wetland area here. The flexibility of this program that many state and federal agency programs has is that we have infinite flexibility. We can work with public landowners, private landowners, and we can do pretty much whatever we can negotiate. So the city wants to put in here a dog park and a soccer field, so we carved out that acreage to allow them to do that. The sustainable portion of this is that the city of Johnson will save a substantial amount of money not mowing that area anymore. Additionally, with Johnson Square being built to the north and mowed paths being installed throughout the area, this will hopefully be a recreational amenity for the folks that are living and working in the city of Johnson. And we will be paying 75% of the cost of this project. Just a more rural and agricultural example. So this is a private landowner in Moores Creek. You can see here they have livestock poultry production and then 2 tributaries of Moores Creek coming through their property. What we will be doing is installing a rotational grazing system. There's lots of research out there showing that rotational grazing not only can improve soil health and water quality, can also help with cost savings for ranchers as well as improved yield. And so we've basically designed a rotational grazing system around their poultry operation here with some reforestation and grassed waterways along their tributaries to Moores Creek there. This will be on 54 acres. So if anyone potentially knows any landowners in those priority subwatersheds, we would love the connection. On the conservation end of things, so I actually was here just under a year ago talking about the open space plan. Not sure if y'all remember that conversation, but we do support implementation of the open space plan. It has identified areas of high conservation value as well as working lands and cultural amenities. Right now, the work of IRWP is to essentially be a liaison between our landowners and land-holding organizations like Northwest Arkansas Land Trust or the Nature Conservancy if a landowner is interested in conserving their property. And we provide capacity for the Open Space Committee and then educational services to stakeholders involved in the Open Space Plan, similar to folks such as yourselves. Just to remind you on the Open Space Plan, so here's Weddington Woods, and the Illinois River is kind of on this side of Benton and Washington counties, with the White River and Beaver Lake on, of course, the eastern side. So how else can we help Washington County? And so the Streambank Erosion Inventory Report for your planning staff and the open space plan that is available to your planning staff and to the Planning Commission as a GIS layer to consult on individual projects. We connect landowners with state and federal incentive programs in addition to our own incentive program. We provide assistance to counties and cities for grant proposals. So if there's a water quality related grant proposal, we can get you as much data as you would like regarding species of conservation concern, water quality status of the watershed, just technical information for those types of grants. And if you ever have any questions regarding the status of water quality issues, please, feel free to contact me. Additionally, I will say we do have a series of field tours through the year. So Justices Cunningham and Jenkins and Pond came to our city-county forum in the spring. Thank you for doing that. We do have next week a Streambank restoration field tour. So please keep an eye out for those field tours. Feel free to attend. if you think it would be valuable, or send it to relevant staff for the county. I thank you so much for some time to talk about water quality in addition to everything else you have to talk about. I really do appreciate it.
Ms. Madison?
Thank you for being here. I was looking forward to Jimmy Martis maybe being with you, but I guess he skipped out. So those of you who remember JP Martis, he's on their board.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
what is our funding history for you all?
Yes, great question. So the county has been a supporter of IRWP since its inception in 2006. So of the last 3 years, our contract has been for $5,000. Prior to that, it was at $10,000.
Do you know why it went down?
I would presume budget constraints.
Okay, because I think when you and I talked about that, it was sort of a surprise to me. Do you know what Benton County gives you?
$10,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
I would love for you to come back and present more about the open space program.
Sure.
At some point, because I was not on the quorum court at that time, and I would love to hear more.
Yes, and I would probably call in Elizabeth Bowen with Regional Planning Commission, who kind of owns that project.
Okay.
But yeah, sure,
Great. Thank you.
anytime.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I recall, I think the funding mechanism is what we were opposed to. I think Justice Madison and I both didn't agree that it was a 1 cent sales tax. Do you recall that is what was being proposed? Because that was our question to Ms. Bowen. And if,
Yes.
for open space.
Yes.
It was a 1 cent sales tax. Is that still, do you recall that information?
Yes, so, yeah, there was a request for a sales tax to, implement the open space plan. At this point, the committee, and Northwest Arkansas Land Trust is really managing that committee at this point, and we would like to do some additional study of feasibility and voter willingness around that issue.
Yeah, with the jail and the radios and all that stuff, I mean, when you start getting in quarter cent, half cent, 1 cent, it just starts going up and up and up and up and up. But we always supported what you're doing. It was a fantastic presentation, but I think we all just kind of reeled back when it was the mechanism to fund it. So if we can
Sure.
do other things with that, I mean, you've got a lot of support on this court, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Your funding is totally separate from the open space. I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Okay,
It is open space. We were talking about open space, and she
Right, I
said
just wanted to make
Elizabeth
sure.
Bowen was presenting that. She did a fantastic job at presenting open space. So,
Yes.
thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Open space, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Okay, next we have, here we go. Archives discussion. You know, I want to make a comment before we get started in the discussion of this. When Ms. Madison asked me to put this on the meeting, I didn't have any idea what the intent was or even what was going on. But as a result of that request, I spent most of a day down here in Washington County, going and visiting the archives area and talking to leadership about what's going on there. And I think from all I can understand about the emails we received about this, there's two basic issues here involved in this. And one is personnel. And I don't think we can go ahead and impose on Mr. Pond's committee to talk about personnel. And the second I see would be the fact that we have two elected officials that have responsibility for the archives. And that's Mr. Kyle Sylvester and our county judge. And so I don't know quite what we can talk about. I did visit, and what I did find was that Miss Patty has taken over helping down there. Anytime she's not there on duty, she forwards the phone in that area to her cell phone, and she's available to get that all the time. In addition, she shared with me the number of contacts she has by phone and in person, and that was a total of 2 per day. So, to think about having a full-time person, even a part-time person down there doing that just doesn't make much sense to me. The records down there are all 26 years old or older. Most of them are much older. The rest of the records that people might want will be on the internet or in Mr. Sylvester's office to be available at any time. So the longer we go in this process, the less likely the problem will be with archives down there at that office. Yeah, just written. But so I want to be sure that, number one, we don't venture off here in the personnel area, and number two, be careful we recognize the responsibility of our two elected officials. Ms. Madison?
Thank you. I've heard a lot of concerned comments about the resignation of the Director of Archives, as well as the status of the records. When I talked to Mr. Sylvester, my understanding was that the records, he didn't have room for the records to be relocated to his office here.
I agree.
And so you made reference to them being here, and so I'm concerned about where they're going to be and if there's not going to be anybody there with them. And then the second issue is a constituent contacted me concerned that she'd heard some of them are being moved to the Shiloh Museum.
I have no idea about that. Ms. Patty, do you have any comment about something being moved to Shiloh Museum?
If you have any questions, you can ask the county
Mr.
judge.
Sylvester, do you have any comments about that? About records being moved to the Shiloh Museum? I haven't heard that, sir. Okay. Nobody seems to have any idea about that situation.
Well, what is the plan? I mean, are they going to be in Mr. Sylvester's office? Are they going to be at the historic courthouse? Where
They're going to remain in the old courthouse.
And Mr. Sylvester's expected to oversee that?
That is a shared responsibility. Right now, the records are down there in the old courthouse, and he is directly responsible for those records.
No, Mr. Sylvester's office is not. We've been told we were going to have an ordinance to approve the moving of that responsibility that we've yet to see.
I've not heard anything about that at all.
It's historically and, well, forever been under the county judge's responsibility.
I know, yep.
It was only a new proposal to move the Director of Archives to Mr. Sylvester's responsibility, which we were told we would see an ordinance in September, and it's November 4th, and we haven't seen it. So, I mean, there are a lot of historians, not just in Northwest Arkansas, but around the state and outside the state, that are very concerned with the status of these records. I mean, I've heard from very prominent historians in Arkansas about what is going on with archives, and I think the people need to know very clear plan for what is going to happen. So I hope I've gotten that point across. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me speak.
Ms. Madison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to start out by thanking you for putting this on the agenda. It was at my request. And this is not just a bunch of old dusty records down at the courthouse. You should know that Washington County probably has the most complete set of archives west of the Mississippi. In the letter that we received from Mr. Wappel, he told a story of a county circuit clerk during the Civil War who hid our records in Fincher Cave near Greenland to make sure they stayed safe. And we have probably the most complete run of original records from the time of the Arkansas Territory to now. These are valuable records that belong to the public, and they've been stored very shoddily in the past. When Charles Johnson, county judge back in the early 90s, decided to look at this issue, there were some stored in basements, there were some stored in the tower of the clock, there were some stored, at the old jail. And I talked to a lady today that helped rescue records from the old basement of the jail where they were molded and kind of icky. So the public needs to be able to access the publicly accessible portion of these records, and it's important that we keep them safe. They're old. If they're not tended to, somebody else might decide they want to go down there and take them, because old records are valuable.
Yep.
I mean, can you imagine what the deed of Mr. Fulbright's house might be valuable to somebody? Mr. Wappel had a huge job when he first took this over. He inventoried everything. He bought shelving for it. It's in the vaults down at the old courthouse. Then he started microfilming them. Then he started digitizing them. Now, digitizing, from what I understand, because you have to have a machine to read it, is not really considered to be an archival type of saving. But as his job finally began to be contained, he lost some staff through attrition, which was good, and he actually asked to have some part-time staff. He's made numerous requests and gotten not a lot of report back, but we need to value our records, and we need to make sure that they are protected for generations to come when people need to look things up. When my son-in-law, also somebody's husband, bought the Old Farmer's Daughter restaurant site here in Fayetteville, I went straight to the archives to look up those records to see, you know, what was the history of this old house that was in absolute ruin, that I'd pulled a dead vacuum cleaner and 3 sets of bed springs from the underbrush. It turned out was original property owned by one of the founders of the university and a former county judge. And I learned that from the archives and our old courthouse.
Okay.
Oh, and she
Well, you
says
know,
it's haunted.
I'd
But at
like
any
to-
rate, I just want to impress on everybody that we need to know what's happening with these records and make sure that they are kept safe
Okay.
and available to the public.
I'd like to make one comment about that. You know, I'd invite anybody to go down there and visit the archives and see how securely they are held. They're very well organized, and they're very, very old records down there, come back into the 1800s. And Patty gave me a good tour of that thing, and I was totally impressed with the security and the organization of that whole area. Ms. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a suggestion, this is just something, is it a possible solution to this being left in our hands or one elected official's hands, and can we form some sort of a board of county officials and historical professionals that can oversee what happens with these records and work together to determine how to best keep them safe? How do you go about making a board?
You're a legislative body. You're asking, that's an executive decision. You're a legislative body, so you don't have the opportunity to oversee any kind of department like that.
Okay, so that was my question. I was just asking how that happened. So you're saying that is
An executive
an
decision.
executive decision?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Lemming?
I think this needs to go to the Personnel Committee to be handled. I think our records are safe. I just think we have some personnel issues that needs to be hashed out. I just think I'd like to make a motion that we send this to the Personnel Committee.
Send away.
I'm sorry?
There's no personnel.
Well,
There's not involved.
well, it's not really personnel at this point. And that's what I'm saying. This is not personnel. This is really an executive decision be handled by the elected officials that have a direct responsibility, and that's what I understand.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Bond,
that's
do you
only
have-
two, that's only two people then, the county judge and who?
And
Kyle?
the circuit court,
Okay,
Kyle Sylvester.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Bond?
Yes, I also was one who was very concerned about rumors going around, but as I've learned firsthand that we in fact do have personnel down there at this time that I trust quite a lot, that's taking care of us as quorum court secretary for a time now. I've gotten to know Patty, and it doesn't seem that it's gotten in her way of her duties, providing and taking care of us and the service she provides for us. I'm not really concerned about what the situation is there now, as long as it stays along those lines. I would say we're in very good hands.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a comment here from Judge Wood. Says our archives office has functioned seamlessly over the last 2 weeks. Office hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Thursday. Accessibility and services are still available to Washington County citizens. And you know, I think I made a comment before. Miss Patty told me that anytime she's not down there, she forwards that phone to her cell phone. so she can take take questions or responses at any time based on what's going on, what's needed down there. Ms. Madison, do you have a question?
I had a comment, if that's okay. Thank you. I just wanted to respond to J.P. Jenkins. There was an ordinance passed in 1990 after Charles Johnson first started looking at this issue. And that's where it's spelled out in an ordinance that this is because Charles Johnson was the county judge at the time, that it's the county judge's purview to take care of the archives. And presumably, I didn't see anywhere in there where it said anything about the circuit clerk, but I know he generates a lot of records. But if the quorum court wanted to include the circuit clerk, we could amend that ordinance. I'm just saying that for information.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ms.
This is my concern, the ordinance, and I think we need to look at the ordinance. I think the attorney needs to review this ordinance and bring it to the court so we can make a decision of what we need to do with the ordinance, because the ordinance is county law. And so whatever this ordinance says is what we should follow, and I'm not sure what the ordinance says. So anyway, if he would get the ordinance for us, so we can look at it and see if the court needs to make, do we need to make a decision, or is it the county judge that needs to make a decision?
Okay,
So, thank you.
Any other questions, any other comments? You know, Mr. Gales provided something for me here I want to share with y'all. Do you know that during the past year, we've lost 139 employees? That's nearly 25% of our workforce. And that's probably related more to wages than anything else. So this situation is probably like many of those others, where people had other situations going on, retirement or various things. But in addition, at the same time, we've had to hire 198 people. And from what I understand, it takes at least a month, 2 months to replace somebody if you've got somebody willing to come to work for you. So it's an issue there that requires a lot of attention. And I think this is one of those situations where we lost an employee. It's very valuable to the county. He's done a fantastic job. I really think maybe a good illustration here, you know, if a builder is going to build a home, when he builds that home and the job is done, then it's a matter of maintenance. And I think we've got a good job done down there on our archives, and now it's a matter of maintenance and being sure they're secure. So let's see if there's any public comment, and we'll move ahead. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Justices, I'm Malin Rice. I'm the past president of the Washington County Historical Society, a board member of the Arkansas Historical Association, and the treasurer of the Fayetteville Public Library. I'd like to talk to you tonight about the archives, and especially if you've not looked up ordinance number 9019. It's passed in August of 1990 by Judge Charles Johnson, sponsored by Kenneth Galloway, passed 10-0, which was a full quorum court at the time. Now, there's been a mistake said here tonight. All the county officials that handle records are involved in the archives, and it says so in this ordinance. But it does, in the final part of the ordinance, say that the title to all archives in the physical possession of Washington County Archives shall be vested in the Washington County Archives to be preserved and administered by the Washington County Judge in accordance with the provisions of this ordinance. Now, the circuit clerk, county clerk, treasurer, recorder, everybody else, tax assessor, has the right to put things in the archives and responsible for the records in the archives. But it is the judge's sole responsibility by this ordinance. I've had 2 meetings with Judge Wood, and I think he understands that. I think to transfer the employees to another elected official is a mistake. I think they need to stay with the judge's purview as he is the administrator of the county. He's also the county official responsible for assigning office space within the county. So it all falls under the county judge. This ordinance written in 1990 will serve you today. It also talks about there needs to be adequate employees down there. Preservation of the records are one thing, but now, Mr. Bowman, I disagree with you on this. There may just be 1 or 2 calls a day, but I want each member of the quorum court to know that the archives in Washington County appeal to people all across the nation and across the city and across the state. And 1 or 2 people a day who may travel here, stay in a hotel or motel to research the records, spend money, eat in our restaurants, and do things is part of the tourism which comes up from the archives. And people do all kind of research in there. Now, it may seem like 1 or 2 people a day, but yet you have other county employees who only have in contact with 1 or 2 people a day outside of their usual jobs. So you can't say, well, there's not much activity down there to put a full-time person in. You have a wonderful person in there now, and that's fine. It's my concern that Mr. Wappell, after he resigned, there would be no one overseeing the archives. Or that they'd be locked up and someone had to run from the circuit clerk's office or county clerk's office down there with the key and let someone in. Well, that's not happening. The process to find another archivist and to move this along is something I hope the court will preserve and look forward to, because I think it's a necessary service and a part of the history of Washington County that the county needs to maintain and control.
Okay.
As far as we know, there's nothing missing from the archives. I too have heard that rumor that they were sent to the Shiloh. That is not true, as far as I can ascertain. But all the people I've talked with across the state, and Mrs. Madison and I are in touch with some of the same people for different state organizations, state officials, that they want these archives preserved, and it's more than just a bunch of dusty records down there.
Okay.
I really want to take the court to task to follow the 1990 ordinance.
Okay.
And to make sure that the archives are followed through in the way they're reserved. This is a wonderfully written ordinance. If you've not read it, it talks about the cooperation of all the county officials to have a part of the archives and be responsible for their portion of the archives. It talks about archives that are redacted by the courts, all kind of sensitive information. And yes, the records down there are from 1963 and backwards.
Okay.
But in
Sir.
the future, these archives may be more than that.
All right, thank you for commenting.
All right, thank you.
Listen, we always require that you stay under 3 minutes. I'm sorry I didn't say that to begin with, but we've only got 12 minutes allocated for comments. Yes, ma'am. Name and location?
I'm Gladys Tiffany from Fayetteville. I'm really grateful to get Mr. Rice's opinion on that, because I have another concern that even though the old archives may be stored away in this area, that an archivist really has other functions besides just making sure nobody takes the archives, that there's a lot of managing and ensuring that there's representation for different issues that are included in the archives, and that different documents are actually included in that. And I think that's going to be true of the online archives as well as the pre-63 archives. So I think considering that we have somebody who's going to answer the phone is such a small part of what an archivist actually does. And I hope the court remembers to consider that.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to the County Services Committee. My name is Sarah Thompson. I live at 3428 East Wyman Road in Fayetteville. I am a retired librarian with 30-plus years of experience working in school, public, and academic libraries, the last 25 of which were in the Fayetteville School District. I, too, am concerned about the future of the Washington County Archives and want to urge committee members in the full quorum court to carefully consider, one, what a unique resource we have, and number two, how essential the continued maintenance and oversight by a trained professional is and will be to the citizens, lawmakers, and visitors to our county. According to the Council of State Archivists, the reasons for keeping, sustaining archive collections include some of the following: to collect records that make transparent government possible, to preserve evidence of civil and property rights, to ensure that rapidly changing technologies do not create an information dark age, and that to protect the most essential records from natural and man-made disasters. Many of you may not realize that our Washington County Archives are unique and special due to the fact that they are extremely well organized and accessible not only to citizens of the county, but to individuals and researchers everywhere. Some of these records that have been digitized are searchable online, such as land records that include deeds and mortgages, and marriage records, which are searchable by book number, page number, bride's name, and groom's name. These resources did not just happen by themselves, but were carefully and precisely scanned and indexed by the now former archivist, Anthony Lapel. For the resources that are not searchable online, many of these have been scanned and photographed and are stored on microfilm. These records are also indexed to make them accessible. Without the work that has been done over the past 2 decades, finding county records would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. I urge you to go to the website, county.washington.ar.us, and see for yourselves that other records such as financial records, court records, licenses, registrations, school records, tax and assessment records, elected officials, and justices of the peace from 1829 to 2018, historic place names, historic sites in Washington County. There are also links to other helpful resources, a history of the Washington County Courthouse, and brief histories of other county buildings. And I will repeat what has already been said briefly. Did you know that the reasons we have such a vast collection in the Washington County Archives and why it's so unique among the Arkansas counties within the state? Because there was a forward-thinking circuit county clerk named Presley Smith who took the effort to save the records during the Civil War by hiding them in Fincher's Cave near Greenland in Washington County. And we have one of the most complete sets of antebellum records west of the Mississippi, and that Washington County has a near complete run of original records from the days of Arkansas Territory to the present, records of our grandparents and our great-grandparents that helped pay for this with their hard-earned tax money.
Ma'am, thank you.
May I finish one paragraph?
Second.
Thank you. Abandoning these archives without the oversight of a caring and knowledgeable individual will leave this treasure unattended and subject to misuse, damage, loss, and disorder. Again, I urge you to carefully consider the future of these irreplaceable tomes and artifacts that have been so highly valued by our Washington County ancestors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any time left? We already used the 12 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 more minutes. We got 2 more minutes left for somebody want to make a comment. Okay, I want to thank you all for coming and making comments. I want to tell you something. There's no doubt in my mind that our county judge is just as concerned about the security and the maintenance of those records and protection of those records as anybody in this room. So just rest assured that we're concerned about it, that they are secure now, and I believe they'll remain secure. And did you have a comment?
Yes, I need to go up there. Can I say it?
I'm sorry?
Go up there, okay.
Yeah. You got 2 minutes.
I'll make it fast. You said that the archives are the longest.
Sir, who are you?
Oh,
Where are you from?
My name is Jacob Hodges. I'm a Washington County resident. I'm from Springdale. You said that the archives are the longest running archives west of the Mississippi River. Did you say that? Is it?
That's my impression from what other people have said. Yes.
Okay. So with that being said, considering these archives, I've lived in Washington County for 18 years. I've constantly been looking for things about Fayetteville, things about Washington that are interesting, that stand out from the rest of America, and I never knew about that. I never knew the archives ran that long. That's extremely interesting, knowing the importance of American history here in Northwest Arkansas. And so the fact that they are the longest running, maybe something else that should be considered is letting people know about it. Because I know there's tons of people out here who like myself, who had no idea about those archives there, And so if it is the largest collection of archives west of the Mississippi River, it's not only owed to the, Washington County to preserve and to take care, but it's owed to the United States.
Yep.
Because people descend from this area all over the place. And it is something, I feel like sometimes Fayetteville is shy about its beauty and its interesting points. I feel like maybe that should be brought forward, because if people know that, they understand where they live more, and they, if they have that reference there, that's a great resource for America to know who it is as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that winds up this. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, we're adjourned.